Right, well, welcome to the fourth part of the tutorial where we're rewriting the Pygame code that was done by KidsCan Code. We're on part 4 now. We're adding graphics, and today's session we're using Lua and the Love2D. So I'd encourage you to watch this video. It's extremely good, and there are some links in there to get the graphics that you need. On my GitHub page, obviously in the Love2D section, you'll find the files, the code I'm using, and those same links are repeated here to get the graphics in. So let's head over to Zero Brain and we'll see what's happening here. So I'll just show you what we're doing today. Let's move it across from the other screen. So the reason for the rectangles round is I'm running this in debug mode, so that I don't get destroyed when I'm trying to demonstrate. As you can see, we're able to fire bullets, but they've all got graphics around them now, including both the player and the mobs. I'll just try running it briefly in non-debug mode, but I'll probably get killed before I can even drag it across from one side of the screen to the other. At least you'll get to see what it looks like even briefly. Let's hit the button. Right, it doesn't seem to work while I've got the screen grabbed, which is handy. Right, let's see if I can let go of the button and move myself out the way at the same time. Yep, we're there. Oh, no, too late. So same principle, but that's why I always run it in debug mode, so that I can actually show you what I'm doing without it disappearing. Okay, so let's see how this is all come about. Now, we've got a few new variables loaded in. So previously we've had these few up here with the bullets and the bullet timer and so on, a mob list and a bullet list. Now we've got a new table now called sprites. So just an empty table. And this is to hold all of the graphics, which I've referred to as sprites here. The love.load is, of course, the first sort of entry point. So let's see what that's got to show. This is all the same as it was before, but we've now got a new function here called load images. So this is where we can load in our images. So we'll move that, show you that one now. So if you remember, we created this empty sprites table at the top here, and in typical Lua fashion, all we now need to do is to put a dot something behind it, and we've created a new property. So the sprites background is a love.graphics new image, and we're loading in the starfield PNG. As I say, the images source and their names and everything's all described on the GitHub page. I've not uploaded the images directly there. You have to find them from their original source. So this kind of loads it into this table so that we know where that image is. And similarly for the player, the bullet and the meteor, we've got different images here that are being stored in that table. So that's what that does. It just puts some images into the table. Require the player as before. Now the properties have changed. We're now setting the properties by passing in an image, the sprites.player image, and with the scale of that image, because the one that is supplied by the Open Game Art is slightly too big, so we're chopping it in half by reducing its scale to a half, and the same speed, 500. So let's check what changes have been made to the player. So the set properties now has changed. That we're just increase this font a little bit. That's it. We've now got the sprite coming in. So we've now got a player.sprite. We've now got to take into account of the scale. So we've got a player.scale. Rectangle as before, except that the size of the rectangle, instead of being passed in as a parameter, is now being taken from the get width of the image. So there's our image, and we're getting the width of it, multiplying it by the scale. so that if the image was, say, 20 by 20, and we've multiplied it by a half, then obviously our image is going to be 10 by 10. So that's the size of the rectangle there. Same with the height, we're getting it from the image. So that's setting up our rectangle for us using the scale. The rest of the rectangle is again just set up in here. There's no change to the update. That one does exactly the same as it did before. It just moves the rectangle around. There is a difference now to the draw function. So what this does now is, first of all, it draws the actual sprite here. So using love.graphics.draw, we can pass in a drawable, as you can see from the tooltips here. So that means an image or a quad or various other bits and pieces that can be drawn. So we're drawing the image at this position, the player rectangle X, player rectangle Y. Now the nil here is because I don't know if we can get this to stay up and move onto it. Anyway, if you can see with the tooltip that pops up, we've got the drawable X number, Y number, then R, which is rotation number. So we're not rotating it, so we pass nil instead of rotate. Then the SX is scale X, and then SY is scale Y. So we're passing in the player scale twice. I believe you can get away with just passing it in once, and it kind of infers that you're using the same scale otherwise, but I'd rather just state it directly. So we're passing in the player scale to reduce the size of the image, and then if the debug is on, then we're setting a red color and drawing a rectangle in line rather than fill. So this is the difference between Love2D and Pygame. In Pygame, you just draw a rectangle, and then if you put at the end of the parameters a number such as 1, then you get a 1 pixel wide line instead of a filled one. Love2D does it slightly differently. You either pass fill or line. Again, if you're putting in line, you can add a number at the back here by a comma number, and then that will draw it with a different thickness of line, but I've just left it at the default. I've reset the color back to white so that any other graphics drawn on it won't be affected by the red color scheme that's been set here. So that's just to kind of reverse it back to white. Otherwise, any other graphics will get tinted by the red. Okay, that's just about it for the player. Let's go back to main. So next we're doing our mobs, similar to what we did before, except this time all we're passing to the mob is, again, just a single image. So let's go to the mob, and we'll just increase the font a bit here. So the constructor here, we're taking the mob, the sprite that we're passing, and then again just creating a rectangle using that image or sprite to get the width and height. And that, as before, is setting other properties with the positioning of that. So this is all the same as it was previously. Again, on the draw function, we've got the sprite itself is being drawn here, and then if shared debug, again set it to red, draw a line rectangle around it, and then set it back to white. The only thing we haven't gone through is bullet. Let me just do bullet while we're at it. So the changes in bullet are, again with the constructor, we're passing a sprite. I've actually specifically set the rotation here at 0. I'm not quite sure why I did that. That might be an error, because we're not really dealing with rotation with the bullet, though we are with the mobs at a later date. So I suspect that's a mistake. So, or it might be that we needed it in the draw function. To be honest, I can't remember. No, we're not. So that could go. I think we can quite safely comment that out. Anyway, speed is set to 1000 and speed Y at 400. And then a rectangular collider as before. So it's really only the minor changes here is that we're passing a sprite instead of creating a rectangle. We're creating the rectangle based on that image now. Okay, and then in the draw function again, we're drawing the sprite, and then we're setting the, if it's in debug mode, we're drawing a yellow line around the bullet. So let's save that and make sure that what I've just deleted doesn't make any effect. Oh, it's running on the other side of the screen. Let me just change that back to debug is true, because I couldn't drag it over in time before I died. So true there. Right, here we go. Okay, it seems to be running okay. So deleting that rotation thing made no difference at all. I may well fix the GitHub repository so that line's not even in there. It was obviously something I put in by mistake. But that's how we're doing today. So as you can see, everything's working as it was before, except we've got some images. If my finger work was quicker, I would show you this without these rectangles around them. But there we go. Let's see if there's anything else that we need to go through. We've done all the different things there. The shoot, loading, drawing. No, everything else is pretty much the same. It was just really that we substituted the graphics. So that again kind of shows you the advantage of doing everything using functions and breaking it into different pieces, is that we've made now some fairly major changes in the way this behaves. But by just making some simple changes in each of the classes to cope with graphics instead of rectangles, the code is otherwise exactly the same and runs and works exactly the same. So that's quite handy. Okay.